My first acquaintance with the whole concept of having a regional park district here was on March the 7th of 1970.
It was formed in a cauldron of controversy over coastal protection.
We had to get a vote of the supervisors, and the supervisors were opposed to the whole concept of forming this district.
Clearly, the County of Monterey was unable to satisfy the open space needs of the people on the Monterey Peninsula.
We went out and got, as I recall, 7,100 signatures, or over 22% of all the registered voters. And this was the work of the Sierra Club. They went out and they got these votes. So we presented this to the Board of Supervisors, and they had no alternative but to let us put it on the ballot. So again, the Sierra Club mustered the voters and got the vote out for what was, I believe, called Measure A on the local ballot. And the Coastal Act passed, and we passed also. If we hadn't done it then, we probably could never have formed this district.
In that controversy, we began to take aggressive steps to be the lead agency in western Monterey County toward the acquisition and preservation of open space.
So that was the start, really, of the park district, I suppose. And it did run well. And I think it ran in part as a repudiation of the people who wanted to maybe foster more indiscriminate growth than most people felt was compatible with the openness of the valley. So that's how the park district, in a sense, commenced.
During those first 2 years, it was a challenge for me because I had an empty desk, an empty office, and the board, you know, kind of looking to me to see where we're going to go.
Here we were, a district. We had nothing. Our goal was to begin to acquire parks and open spaces. So, you know, we started off with a general manager and a part-time secretary, and then, as you know, it has evolved.
Been in New York City working as an executive assistant to the mayor, and then came back to Monterey in the early 70s to practice law, and was involved in the practice of law with my brother at Madison Street in Monterey. And a group came in, led by Gary Tate and members of the board at that time. I think Sean Flavin was one of those. I think John Sigourney was one on that first board. And there were some others, and came in and talked to me about serving as consul to the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District, which at that point didn't have any parks, but it just come into existence. But I shared their goals and their efforts at trying to protect needed areas in the peninsula for not only for recreational purposes, but to protect them so that our children and their children could enjoy them in the future. So we shared a common goal in preserving the beauty of this area, and as a result, I agreed to become consul.
As the first general manager, you know, the primary purpose was to acquire and protect open space. So during those formative years was to try, you know, work with the board and develop some land acquisition policies and to see what opportunities were actually available to acquire land.
We had lists of potential acquisitions, but a lot depended on sort of the opportunities as they arose. That I think, was true of the Garland Park acquisition, for example.
It was hard to believe that it was happening because here was this huge and very beautiful ranch in Carmel Valley. And suddenly the young owners, Bill Garland, decided that they wanted to turn that over to the Park District.
The very initial purchase of Garland triggered some opposition from the wealthy landowners on the north side of the road, who looked over onto Garland. And when they understood that Garland could have put 130 houses or something on the upper plain, that quieted down real quick.
Purchase of the Garland Park was the proudest moment I've ever had, and I always continue to look back on that with great pride, because it was just a wonderful thing for Garland to do. And I think, you know, there's a little sadness associated with that, because it was soon after that transfer was made that Garland died in a plane crash, which was tragic.
I think he sold the property because he felt it was a good thing for the community. And he tragically died in his own airplane short time after that. And hence the reason the park was named after him, in a sense, because he gave more than he needed to give.
In retrospect, it was an ideal first acquisition, because there were many parcels adjacent to the original Garland parcel that we were able to acquire and expand, and eventually get up to 4,500 acres by expanding Garland Park in all directions.
I just have to tell you very selfishly that I live in Carmel Valley. I've lived there most of my life. And to know that that beautiful park and that hillside, it's something that I look at every morning. When I get up in the morning, I look out in that direction, and it is gorgeous. And to know that that beauty is protected, again, for our children and their children, that just makes Garland Park a very special place for me.
The most challenging project we faced was the recreational trail, creation of the rec trail in Monterey and Pacific Grove.
At that time, SP had not even abandoned the right-of-way that was still used infrequently by the sand plant out in Del Monte Forest. But they had talked about their intent to close it down and to eventually perhaps abandon it.
Everyone wanted the trail used, or that area used, where the railroad track went from, let's say, Monterey's Fisherman Wharf south to Lover's Point in Pacific Grove. It was obviously a natural route for some kind of trail. But the use of the trail and how it would function was viewed differently by different people, depending on where they were coming from, what their interests were.
I got together with the city managers of Monterey and Pacific Grove, and we kind of entered an MOU of a memorandum of understanding of our desire to acquire the right-of-way and to use it for recreational use. Once the land was acquired, then the question was, let's move ahead into the development. And at that time, now that the right-of-way was in public ownership, there was a discussion about, well, maybe we should use the right-of-way for a transportation system, a trolley system that can transport people in the Cannery Row area out to Pacific Grove through the wharf. And at the same time, the aquarium had just opened. And the aquarium was an overwhelming success, and there was thousands of people, and there was traffic problems, and everybody thought, well, this is great, we can get the trolley going and transport people to the aquarium. And it was the concept of a little trolley system is fine, but the problem was that the right-of-way was very narrow. In some places around Lighthouse Curve, 20 feet wide, and the tracks were right in the middle, taking up 8 feet. And if you left the tracks there, you would have the remnants of a couple feet on each side of the tracks for the trail. And we felt, and the board felt, that if you put the trolley system in there, the primary use would be trolley and transportation, and recreation would take a back seat, and that wasn't the intent of the purpose of the whole project.
The Park District really took the leadership role in purchasing the land from Southern Pacific Railway, removing the tracks and creating the recreational trail, which has turned out to be one of the most heavily used recreational facilities in the Central Coast.
Early on, the Park District and the City of Monterey formed what I call a great partnership. And out of that partnership came the recreational trail, which is a huge success. It actually links many of the cities on the Monterey Peninsula. And what's truly great about it, that this partnership was created. And after its creation, we have this linear park, the recreational trail, that probably is the most successful and used park that we have in the city of Monterey.
The number one reason that people visit the Monterey Peninsula is the scenic beauty. The rec trail between the Monterey Bay Aquarium and all the way to Lover's Point is our number one asset. 90% of the people indicated that that's why they visit the Monterey Peninsula and specifically Pacific Grove. It means a lot to the business community. It means a lot to the locals who heavily frequent the trail. I know that I personally am down on the trail 5 to 6 days a week, and my family, my son who bikes, is down there at least 3 times a week. We love the trail, and we wish that the Monterey Peninsula Parks District would continue to maintain and improve the trail for the benefit of our locals and the visitors as well.
We pride ourselves on the ability to work with the cities, and the recreational trail, of course, is a prime example.
Yeah, we've worked with Big Sur Land Trust, of course, a lot over the years. We've worked with all the cities in one way or another.
So the Park District is really trying to pool its resources with other agencies and organizations that share the common mission of preserving, protecting open space, parks, and wildlife habitat here on the peninsula. And by doing that, we hope to accomplish as much as we possibly can collectively, certainly much more than we could ever accomplish singularly.
What the Park District has done is not only helped set aside and protect some very beautiful areas for the future, but it's established a partnership with communities in doing that. This goes beyond just a kind of Park District saying this is what we're going to do. The Park District reached out to communities like Seaside, Monterey, and Marina, and others, and said, we're going to work with you to try to not only protect the beauty of this area, but to allow that beauty to be available to people in terms of recreation.
We've acquired facilities that people actually use, and then there are other facilities that are essentially open space. That so you maintain a vista or a view that long term is beneficial, but you couldn't put a specific benefit to it, I suppose.
We like to share our peninsula with visitors. Tourism, ecotourism is a major business here, second only to agriculture. So the economy thrives on the fact that this area is beautiful and remains beautiful.
The real immediate challenge for the Park District is taking a funding apparatus that was basically instituted in 1972 and trying to make it work at the beginning of the 21st century, 30 years later, when land prices have escalated dramatically.
The cost, certainly the cost of any open space is astronomical, and to be able to afford one piece of property on our 1.6 million budget a year when properties are costing 55 million is a major challenge. So funding for land acquisition is a huge issue.
As you have grown, you know, the costs of just operating what you already own continues to grow, and so there's less and less resources left over for additional acquisitions.
We have to balance the need for space to build homes and open space for habitat and recreation.
Well, the biggest challenge is going to be the population press. I mean, the population of California probably will double in the next 10 to 20 years, if not more. That increases the pressure for open space. The cost of land is going to go up. It's inevitable, because there's less land. They aren't making any more coastal property, and it's high in demand, and the prices on the Monterey Peninsula are out of sight now, and they will go higher, which makes it more daunting for us to raise the funds to acquire the property that we need. So those challenges are going to be there and probably increasing in the future.
I think our impact is so big, it's so very big. The place would be so different if we hadn't been formed.
It is very important for those of us in the present to plan ahead and to look at the future and to try to ask ourselves in 25, 50, 100 years, what do we want this area to look like? And if we can make those kinds of decisions about what is it that we want this area to look like, the Park District, as well as the local communities, are going to play a huge role in deciding whether or not the quality of life that we enjoy today is going to be the quality of life that our children enjoy. So I think the Park District is going to play a major role in this area in that kind of decision making.
I think that I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to Monterey County. I really mean that.